Hello and welcome to Doing Business in Rwanda. I am Lois Washira. In this episode, we take an in-depth look at Rwanda's budget for the 2014-2015 financial year, which was tabled last week and stood at $2.5 billion. This year's theme is infrastructure development to accelerate export growth. To start us off, we spoke to Ambassador Claver Gatete, Rwanda's Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, for highlights from this budget.
0.7533 trillion, and it was the way it was divided. You saw that the local financing 62%, and what came from the donors in terms of grants is 31%. What came from outside in terms of the money that we borrowed, mainly from the ADB, World Bank, and others, is 7%. And then we knew how it was distributed, where 52% went to EDPRS, 36% went to the foundational areas which are sustaining the development of our country, and the rest, of course, went to support functions. We also saw that we prioritized the EDPRS, 52%, and out of that, 25% went straight to the economic transformation, and 14% to the rural development, and 10% went to the job creation, if you want to call it that way, and 3% to the governance. So the way it was distributed is to make sure that we have an impact on the population. The growth rate that we projected here was very, very conservative, 6% for this year. 2014, 6%, 6.7%, 2015, and 2016, 7%. And within this budget, we really realize that the deficit has come down. It is 177.2 billion, which is really 3.1% of GDP. 3.1 compared to 5.3 the previous year. We have to be realistic that the growth does not simply come. And that's why we are making sure that we work inside our house. It's the first time that we have put an economic monitoring team in place. Because for the economy to grow, it's human beings. We must get things done, and done faster. And that's why we are monitoring the projects and the programs, how they are being implemented. We want this one implemented 100%. We also want to monitor the areas that are making a big contribution to the GDP, to make sure that these things are implemented as per agreed. Because if you say coffee is going to contribute this one, if you say mining or another one is going to contribute this one here, you have to make sure that what has to be done in that sector is being done. And that's where around September, then we can revise our numbers depending on the efforts of the Rwandans in terms of implementation. Our target is to make sure that by the year 2020, our average growth is averaging 11.5%. And depending on how we put in more effort, we believe we can go back up. But right now, the numbers that we are projecting are based on really the facts that we have now, but with extra effort, we can reach higher. There are external factors that we have no control over. One, it depends on the growth of the rich countries. That's where we send our exports. That's where our money comes from in terms of support. But also those kind of, if their economies really do not perform very well, yes, the projection is to go up to 3.6%, but we don't know what is likely to happen in those countries, and we cannot predict. So there are some political, but also the economic issues that are likely, because with more wars, it means more money is diverted towards those sectors rather than to the traditional support for the developing countries. But also we look at the financial markets, especially in the rich countries and emerging markets. How are they performing? How do they respond? How they respond determines how the global economy is going to be affected. Rather than increasing taxes, let's widen the people who are participating in that, using existing laws. And that way we believe we can make significant progress. But also we are taking advantage of the IT. IT in-house, how we make it easier for people to pay taxes, how to make sure they can declare, how they can pay, without necessarily having to line up in Rwanda Revenue Authority and doing it the last day of the month. So there is more work to be done, but we believe that the more we widen the scope in terms of the people who are included, the better.
One of the key highlights from this year's budget is the planned spending on infrastructure development, which stood at $369 million. We further spoke to analysts to find out if this spending is well distributed and share what Rwandan citizens think about this budget.
The budget to be quoted in Rwanda is 62% of the total budget. That's good news for Rwanda. That's good news for the people of Rwanda. You see now, we are coming to finance our budget more than 60%. That's the first time in the history of Rwanda. And when you analyze the budget, allocation of the budget, most of the money will be allocated to the infrastructure. But when you analyze the budget, the big part is channeling in economic transformation, more than 25% of the total budget. Actually, we analyzed with my colleagues from the social organization, and then we realized the agriculture sector is still, of course, lacking. Because when you cross-check the Maputo Declaration, the head of state in 2003, they committed to channel at least 10% of the national budget to be in agriculture. When we were discussing with the colleagues, we realized the target is not yet met. The direct investment in agriculture. Rwanda joined the East Africa on 1st July 2007, and the EAC countries negotiated to have a customs union from the 1st July 2009. When they negotiated, they agreed on a common external tariff band. There is a tariff band. And in 2009, when the EAC member states started to implement the customs union protocol, they agree on 5 years to come to do amendment. You know, the Minister of Finance usually have the mandate to change or as law provide. And 5 years later now, you would see in this budget, there's good news for the population or the people, the business people. Now, they scrapped or they removed some import duties, which is really one of the appreciations society had in the private sector. So now they moved to the common external tariff implementation, and this budget now, they motivated the people to invest in the public transport. Like the people importing the big buses. So now you pay no transport. You pay no tax, no import duty. And you realize that's the good news for the population, for the public transport. So when you import different telecommunication equipment, you pay no import duty, no customs duties. And you realize that they're good for the country. Domestic tax are increasing when you see this budget. And then the population will buy at a low price when you compare because of the customs duties. And then you realize there is effect. The domestic revenue are going to increase because the people are consuming. That is the economic principle. When the demand is high, so the offer, you have to produce. When you produce, the demand is high. And then the taxes are increasing. Then that means the value added tax, the profit tax, the income tax, so the people are going to pay much.
Compared to the region, if you look around the Rwandan budget, we didn't see so many taxes compared to our regional counterparts. I think most taxes were maintained, while others, like especially in tourism, we saw so many exemptions. And I think for the Rwandan economy, that's a good thing. However, things to do with airtime, we saw an increment in taxes from 8% to 10%. And I think this is going to hamper business, since most of the times it's done through communication. The regional trade, we are now dealing in the regional trade, so you place your orders via the phone and all that. So communication is going to be a problem in the next financial year.
Well, I've not read much about the budget, but the few things I've seen is that the government didn't increase taxes on most basic commodities. As a Rwandan and a family man, I'm very appreciative of the fact that tax on some of the basic commodities and the necessities in daily life didn't go up, which certainly means that price commodities will most importantly remain constant, and which is a good thing, because already we think the cost of living in Rwanda is very high compared to regional countries.
According to taxes, I and others, like businessmen, we have a problem according taxes, because nowadays taxes is heavy. That's why many people have a big problem according taxes. Back to me, taxes must be reduced. For example, for those people who bring things from abroad, the taxes are very, very difficult for paying.
The budget was read and it was interesting, having the biggest percentage allotted to the low-income earners. It's promising, because this will lift the people out of the poverty, and since the government now is focusing on the low-incomers or the poor, it's really good for 2014 and 2015 budget allotment. I saw to the small medium entrepreneurs, and at a low scale to farmers, and purely basically the low medium earners in Rwanda. So basically it's really promising, because since the gap is kind of like lowering up from the rich to the poor, it's really good for us.
And that's this week's program. For stories we featured on this and previous episodes, visit our website, CNBCAfrica.com, and remember to bookmark it. I'm your host, Lois Washira, and from the Doing Business in Rwanda team, I look forward to bringing you more insights on Rwanda's economic progression.